We do have regrets from Harold Bays. He is not going to be able to make it this afternoon, but we have a fantastic panel, I think, for you guys. And kind of the format of this is the overall discussion is a business case for using EPDs. And I've kind of asked these gentlemen to tell you a little bit about their operation, a little bit maybe about their breeding objectives and kind of goals for their place. And then really and truly what genetic predictions EPDs do for them in their operation and for their customers. And so I think how we're going to do it is we're going to start with Paul Bennett. Paul, known you for quite a few years. It was kind of funny, Paul, when I first came to BIF, I think the first one was in '88, and Paul was kind of an up and comer in the BIF movement. So one of the first father-son presidents of BIF, and he was the son portion of that. I'll put that out there. So happy to have him. He's from Knollcrest Farm in Virginia, and I'm going to turn it over to you, Paul, and get this thing started.
Thank you, Dara. It is indeed a great honor for me to be here today. I am a longtime supporter of Beef Improvement Federation and its work over the many years, going back to 1968. And I remember being here in Calgary 25 years ago in 1998 for the BIF meeting. And it's certainly an honor for me to be in this panel discussion today with two gentlemen, Donnell and Sean. I think Dara had told me that his goal today was to have a progression in the complexity of the presentations. So he said I needed to go first. So here I am, Dara. All right, so making a business case for using EPDs is really second nature for me. I'll start with a little bit of background about our operation. Knollcrest Farm Incorporated is a family business. I am the third generation involved in that family business. My nephew, Dalton, is there with us now. So the fourth generation is an active participant there. My grandfather started our seed stock operation in 1944. We've had Hereford cattle since 1944 and marketed our first bulls in 1945. We added Gelbvieh cattle in 1980. We're one of the first to bring that breed of cattle into the eastern part of the United States. We added Angus cattle in 1990, and they've been a very big part of our breeding program and marketing efforts since that time. We have 2 bull sales a year. We sell our fall-born bulls as yearlings in a fall bull sale in December. We sell our spring-born bulls as yearlings in a mid-April sale every year. Those 2 sales would include a sale of just less than 300 bulls in those 2 sales. We also market between 100 and 150 bulls private treaty throughout the year. Obviously, our objective, like any other seed stock operation, is to maintain a sustainable business for our family, a business that can transcend generations and allow us to grow and prosper. And our goal in doing so is to create that same situation for our customers. So as I think about a business case for EPDs, really the first thing that comes to my mind is customer service. And at our place, I spend part of literally 5 to 6 days a week dealing with customer service in some form or fashion. And so as I see it, a big part of our customer service is our need to accurately quantify the product that we're selling. And our product at Knollcrest Farm is commercial bulls. And I've said many times that we're in the business of producing commercial bulls, and everything else we produce and sell is just a byproduct of our program. So the need to quantify that product that we sell is critical to the customer service that we provide, because we've got to get it right. And I remember trying to do this 40 years ago, 30 years ago, 20 years ago, 10 years ago, and the frustration that we experienced trying to identify what our cattle could and could not do for our customers. And I guess I can stand here today, and I think these gentlemen are going to tell you the same thing. We feel like that the comfort level that we have in being able to quantify our cattle is by far and away the highest that it's ever been. And I look forward to the years to come, because I think that as technology continues to evolve, we're going to be able to get it more right every day in terms of being able to know exactly what these cattle will do. I guess I also feel like it's extremely important that we understand the ways that we can maximize the value of our EPDs. And so for us at Knollcrest Farm, you know, as a participant in different breed association genetic evaluations, we have responsibilities, and we have high expectations of the breed associations that we submit data to, but we also must recognize and understand that really the buck stops with us. So our EPDs in actuality are no better than the ingredients that are used to create those EPDs. And I, as a seed stock producer, am largely responsible for submitting those ingredients to the breed association. So first of all, we genomically enhance the EPDs on 100% of our cattle, or essentially 100%. I guess I kind of look at genomic testing the same way I do taking birth weights, weaning weights, or yearling weights. For me, there's kind of a contemporary group component to it. You know, when we started genomically testing cattle years ago, we would select that top end of the calf crop that we felt like we could justify the cost of in collecting genomics. But anymore, we feel like there's value in the bottom end of our calf crop as well as the top. So we no longer wait until post-weaning to process genomics. We collect DNA now using TSUs at the first vaccination time frame, which is typically 3 to 4 months of age. And I submit DNA to the breed associations. Obviously, the calves are registered at that point. We've submitted birth weight information. So when we get to weaning, we've got a lot of information already in front of me, and it allows me to do what I feel like is a much better job than I used to be able to do, doing a sort on particularly our bull calves at weaning time. So we feel like there's value in having that done ahead of time and doing the entire calf crop. Obviously, we are huge believers in collecting a very comprehensive suite of phenotypes on our cattle. And, you know, we hear a lot of discussion today about the fact that breeders can actually generate EPDs off of genomics alone. And I guess this frustrates me at some level, because I feel like as a seed stock producer who is committed to submitting comprehensive data on every animal, you know, in some respects, I'm subsidizing the producers, the breeders who are not as committed to doing that. But we do feel like that's extremely important that we do that. And as an example, I applaud the American Angus Association, who adopted a policy here recently, where they actually include the phenotypes on a registration paper or a performance pedigree. They include the phenotypes that are actually a part of that animal's EPD profile. And I see that as a very valuable tool. Another thing that we try to do is very carefully manage our contemporary groups so that we can maximize the value of the data that we're submitting. I serve on the American Angus Board of Directors, and at our AGI board meetings, we're always talking about the value of that really clean data. And we're always looking for good, clean data that can really enhance the power of our genetic evaluation. And so I feel like as a seed stock producer, it's my responsibility to contribute to that clean data by being very diligent in correctly identifying contemporary groups of the cattle that I'm submitting data on. Another thing that we feel like greatly enhances our EPDs is pretty simple. And I thought about this last night when the Roy Wallace scholarship was being presented there. I remember Roy used to talk about the fact that really, if we wanted to maximize genetic progress, we just stack those highly proven sires. And so we consider that important. I'll be first to admit to say that we don't exclusively use highly proven sires. We do try to use a good mix of proven sires that are going to benchmark our herd appropriately, but we also, like everyone else for the most part, are using a lot of young, highly documented sires that are the proven sires of the future. Another point that I'd like to just hit on briefly is that as we think about EPDs, our bull customers tend to be easily confused at times. And so we're very careful in the way that we present data to our customers. Our bull sale catalogs have evolved over time. And we've actually removed some of the phenotypic data from our catalog because we feel like it adds confusion. And we've really just tried to optimize the amount of data that we put in front of our customers, because I have learned that, we can put our customers in information overload at times, which really does create frustration on their part. And of course, most of the breeds have extremely useful selection indexes that most of us use, and we encourage our customers to use. The way that we present the EPDs, I think, is very impactful in the way that our customers actually utilize those. I mentioned that we private treaty a lot of bulls, and I would be the first to say that typically those private treaty bulls are the bulls that go to our customers that are a little more budget oriented, not as sophisticated in their criteria that they have in a bull. So we try to adjust that as we present information to our customers to make sure we don't frustrate them with actually too much information. I guess with that said, I'd like to say that at Knollcrest, we feel like it's really important that we create a very wide variety of genetics for our customer base, because I've found that no two customers have the same needs, quite frankly. And that's one reason we run multiple breeds. And one thing that I always try to do is spend quite a bit of time getting to know my customer, their need, their environment, their feed resources, and all of those things that are big contributing factors to the type of bull that they need. And we do find ourselves just constantly educating producers on what EPDs mean, why they may not need 35 pounds of milk in an Angus EPD, why they, quite frankly, may not need a +10 Cavanese EPD to breed a set of Angus heifers. And so we find that interaction is crucial to the customer service that we provide. And I would also say that, for selfish reasons, I want to get that part of it right, because every bull we sell has a 12-month unconditional guarantee, which basically means that if I sell someone a problem, if I misrepresent an animal to a customer, then it's going to come back to me, and it should. And so we take great pride in that guarantee, and we understand the amount of responsibility that is behind that guarantee. So with that said, I'm going to quit and defer to the guys that are going to share more complicated information with you today, Darryl.
Thank you very much, Paul. I was looking up here and when I realized this is my computer, I got much more scared. So. All right, next up, we have, and don't worry, we're gonna have time for questions. I kind of want to hold that to the end. I want to get through each of these introductions because Donnell's is going to take about an hour and a half. So, and then we'll have questions after that. So next up is Sean McGrath from Round Rock Ranching here in Canada. We did have an equal mix of 2 Canadians and 2 Americans, but now you got to do double time, Sean. You got to make up for that. So, and he's going to address the same topics that we talked about with Paul. So, Sean, thanks a lot.
I hate to disappoint Paul because he said it was going to get more complicated. Oh, we're good. And to be honest, this is actually, I'm not a very good animal breeder because this is actually, I don't have a single slide with an equation, and this is the only slide with any words, and it's just so I remember the topic. I just wanted to put some context. So our operation, we're 5th generation. My kids are the 6th. We're based in the prairie parkland of Alberta. So it's actually endangered native rangeland. It's one of the most endangered ecosystems in the world. And our operation is very different than our neighbors just because 95% of our operation is that rangeland. The typical mix in our neighborhood would be somewhere closer to 5% being native and the rest would be tame pastures or cropland. We're right around 5,000 acres. Not quite a one-person show. My dad's 86. He has no hobbies, so he goes and drives around, checks cows. And just to give you some context in terms of terrain, I think it was what I talked to Donnell about last night. So the landscape we're operating in, we're native rangeland. I can check about 70% of my fences with a side-by-side or truck. I can check about another 15 to 20% with a saddle horse. And the last you got to do on foot if you can get there. So just to give you some context about where we're using and where EPDs fit. So this is our calving pasture this year. For the first couple of weeks, that's heifers, cows, mature cows, everything's down there. For the first week, I'll probably show up once a day to the top of the hill with a pair of binoculars. I'll try and ride through them once a week. So when we start thinking about EPDs and where we're going, I mean, we can start kind of production cycle. For me, a +10 calving ease is actually really quite important. Even on my cows, a high calving ease becomes really, really important. And it's part to do with scalability and labor, but from a business case, that becomes important. So, and I probably should have mentioned at the start. So our selection goal at our place, my goal is to have $1,000 gross margin per cow. That's my goal. With the current market price, that's going to be pretty easy. But I mean, if I think over the next 10 years, that's maybe a lofty goal, but that's our goal, to have $1,000 gross margin per cow. I want to eliminate cow herd depreciation. That's actually probably harder than $1,000 margin part. And our third goal, and we do this religiously, it's partly EPD selection, but partly just labor and technique with minimal to no interference. So basically, if we touch a cow, she gets the orange tag of death and she's gone. I budget about 10 minutes a cow per year for individual things. So that includes full carcass ultrasound on all the heifers. That includes DNA sampling, branding yearlings, vaccination, AI program. If an individual cow is being touched for more than 10 minutes a year, she probably doesn't need to be there, right? So we're selecting our context, and your context will all be different. And I think it's really important to understand your context will definitely impact your selection decisions. So the other part where EPDs become really important to me, this bottom picture, our cow herd's primarily Angus based. I think you can tell the bull in the back is not. We really use those EPDs to try and, like, we match phenotypes when we're crossbreeding, but we're also trying to really balance those traits and make it complementary, but also we don't want an extreme high growth bull on a low growth bull to create replacement females because the offspring will spread out, right? So we're trying to match those EPDs. Go talk to Larry Keene from USDA about the crossbreed adjustment factors and have him explain it to you. But that's really one of the key roles in terms of our operation. That's where my profit comes from. When I think about functional traits, so we use a lot, we're looking, I'm a little bit challenged because a lot of operations don't have it. We'll select for cattle with EPDs, sires with EPDs in the bottom third of the breed for dry matter intake. Right? Because when we get to the next slide, I don't feed cows in the wintertime. My goal is to not feed cows at all. We'll supplement. But if a cow is in -40 on native rangeland in the middle of January and she can't eat 45 pounds of dry matter, she's probably going to die. Right. So little different context. I know there's a lot of pressure lots of times. It's easy to market a bull in the top 5%, 5 percentile of a breed for a trait. For us, how we're using the EPDs in our system, in our context, especially on the maternal side, is just trying to control and get a range where those cattle will fit and live and thrive with the resources I'm willing to spend. If we had a mixed farm, the numbers we would pick would be not entirely different, but they would be quite different, just because of our resource base. So we'll supplement. So they'll graze on native rangeland. We'll supplement. We'll either use dried distillers or a high protein range cube. We'll go feed the cows about 2 pounds a piece, maybe twice a week, just to keep that rumen functioning. If we get a stretch of 2 weeks of -40, I might go it every day. But those cows, if you're using the EPDs to fit your business, those cows can thrive in our environment. And again, the calves will do the same thing. We'll use our small amount of cultivated acres. So we actually only, out of our 5,000 acre place, we run about 60 acres cultivated. We'll grow high protein cover crops on there. We'll swath graze calves on there in the wintertime. We'll buy in a little bit of better feed for calves. But we're actually taking those calves through winter. I don't even necessarily need a pound of gain over the winter, because when I hit that grass in our grazing system, those calves will explode and they'll breed and they'll do all those good things. So again, I just want to kind of lay out, and it's really so important is to have that context. And I mean, you touched on it wonderfully in terms of understanding if you're selling genetics, what's my customer's what's his context, right? Can I get the right bull to him? He may come and want the highest performing or the fastest bull or and for any ranchers in here, I know I don't have a 600 horsepower articulated loader tractor. I'm sure most of you don't either, because when I want to move bales, that's not functional, right, for what I'm trying to do. So when we start talking about EPDs, to make them functional and keep that goal in mind for what are we trying to do, I think is really important. So for us, they're a key component, and lots of times we're selecting a range rather than, we're not trying to be the top, however you want to define that, of the breed of the population. So I think Donnell's going to talk more about kind of some ways they do that. So thank you.
Thanks a bunch, Sean. So last up to give us his little spiel is Donnell Brown from R.A. Brown Ranch in Texas. Donald and I have known each other for a little while. I think we first met at the Noble Foundation. Was that the adaptability deal that we were working on? Something. But anyway, known him for a few years. But a really good guy and a really good thinker, and I'm Donald's going to share a little bit with you, and then we'll get into the discussion after that. So Donald, it's all yours.
Thank you very much. It's a joy to be here with you today, and honor to be with this group. And I noticed there wasn't anything on the program until 7 in the morning, so we got plenty of time. Looking forward to sharing some thoughts and ideas, and mainly hearing your questions and having good discussion. Blessed to be a part of the 7th generation. I'm the 5th generation of a ranching business. We've sold about 19,000 bulls in my lifetime. We've worked with 17 different breeds of cattle. We're focused on 3 now. I remember being a teenager and working with EBVs when they first came out with my dad in selection. To me, EPDs are used for 3 primary purposes. One is selection. 2 is for marketing, the product that we have. And now even commercial guys, we look on Superior and a lot of those are using EPDs with their bull battery and EPD tests from genomic companies to better describe the genetic value of their cattle through genetic prediction. And then third to me is risk management. I'm not a big risk taker. I like to manage risk the best that I can. And so to me, that is important to do. You know, I used to think I could tell a whole lot about looking at one. And I will tell you, I've never had a customer ask for an ugly one. I'm all about using all the data that I can, but I want to make sure they're sound, they're functional. But I remember in high school, Paul, a wise gentleman told me I was showing a heifer and my heifer was really broody, but not quite pretty enough. And he was placing me about fourth, but complimenting about how good a cow she was probably going to be. And he said, son, just remember, the prettiest girls don't always cook the best biscuits. At our house, it's pretty is as pretty does. And selecting the right bull to me is just as important as selecting the right spouse. And with that, I want to know as much as I can. I want to know as much as I can about that person or that bull. So before we take the leap, I want to do more than just look this person up on farmersonly.com. I want to meet her family, look a little pedigree investigation. All right. I want to look at her siblings and her cousins. I want to find out a little, as much as I can, that I'm going to spend the rest of my life with on this person. When I select a bull, that bull is going to produce a lot of offspring and have a major impact on my program. And that's an important part of our program. EPDs to me are a part of our toolbox. Along with visual appraisal, they are a part of our toolbox. And I love the EPDs that we're given and the breed associations that we work with and the organizations that we work with. And I want all the tools that I can find to make the best decisions for selection, and then how to best communicate that to my customers to get the most value for each of those animals and to mitigate risk. Let's talk about mitigating risk for just a minute. All right, let's say last year you bred 25 heifers, Dr. Odie. Let's say you got 25 heifers, you got them all bred to your bull, and you calved them out, and life is good. Everything went just the way you wanted, no problems. Now, Jerry Cassidy, it's time to breed the second set of heifers. And you've got two bulls to pick from. All right, Cody Hayes, you got two bulls. You can pick from the bull you used last year that you got along great with, or you can use a virgin bull. Now, at the coffee shop, they say younger bulls produce lighter birth weight calves. I don't know if there's a lot of truth in that, but actually I know there's none. So with that, but this younger bull has exactly the same EPDs as the older bull. Which one do you feel most comfortable in using? I think most of us would say the bull that had 25 calves. And when I do a DNA test on all our calves, it's like getting 25 calves worth of information, and not more than just for calving age or birth weight, but for about every trait and some even more information. That to me is powerful accuracy. You know, I remember my grandfather making selection decisions based strictly on visual appraisal and trying to select that smooth-shouldered, Roger won that smooth-shouldered Cavanese bull with sleek head. Boy, he was going to be a Cavanese bull. And sometimes it worked, and sometimes it didn't. I am thankful for the tools that we have available. I told you I remember being in high school, or being in junior high when EBVs, the precursor to EPDs, first came out, and having this big accordion fold-out spreadsheet of dot matrix printer. And my dad used those, and I used those in making our mating and selection decisions. And as we look at this chart right here, and as you look, EPDs started about right there. And if we want to make a business case for the value of EPDs, to me, this is a great chart to do it, because with that, you see how the genetic trend, this trait is birth, weaning, yearling, and milk for the Red Angus breed of cattle. And you can see, and you can look at a multitude of breeds, and nearly all of them look like this. They're pretty flat line or really up and down until we get the tool, the genetic prediction tools to make more accurate decisions. Now with that, I want to talk about, all right, I think there's a lot of us in the room and in this conference today with, making a business case for EPDs. That's pretty simple. We believe in them. We use them, whether we're commercial producers or seed stock producers, not a problem. But how do we best present those tools in a more, you said simplification was important to you and your customers. I think that's true for all of us. So how do we simplify it? Well, I'll tell you a method I use. All right, I like to look at weather maps, soil moisture maps, the weather channel. And they started several years ago using all these colors to describe variance in rainfall or in soil temperature, or moisture, or all those different things. And so I like to look at it like a stoplight. And I'll take my EPDs and I will color code them similar to a stoplight with kind of a between yellow and green for good enough. Okay. So let's look at all of our EPD, all of our breed associations. We have percentile rank tables. Okay. We can find them in print. We can find them on the internet, the percentile rank tables. What's good? It depends. It depends on your environment, depends on your market, depends on your situation. It depends on many factors. So I look at it if I'm selecting a multi-purpose bull to use on heifers and cows, and green is good and red is bad, mine's going to look a little bit like that. Okay? Where I want, that's calvings and birth weight, weaning, yearling, and milk. Now you notice those first four, the green's at the top, the red's at the bottom. Now, if I'm using a bull to use on heifers, that calvings, that live calf's really important. I'm going to put more emphasis on that. Now, milk, look at milk. And I think all of us up here today are talking about having it in the right proportions. And I like milk more in the middle of the road. To me, that's a safer zone. Bob Prosser in Arizona, he may want a little bit less than that. I talk to my friends in fescue country and say, really, I need a little more than that because that fescue kind of sucks that performance out of it. It depends on our situation. Now let's look at the whole. This is for the Angus breed of cattle. All right, let's look at the whole spreadsheets. Where's good, where's bad? I think this is something that if we as breeders of cattle would set our goals for what we want, where we want to be and where we don't want to be, I think we will better find and produce the cattle that we're looking for. So there is a color code. Green is good, yellow is okay, red is bad. For all of the 22 traits and multiple selection indexes at the Angus breed. I'm not saying this is right for you. I'm saying this is an example that producers may want to utilize. And to me, that really simplifies. And then what I'll do is I'll take my whole spreadsheet of all the sale bulls and color code can flow all of the bulls in the catalog so that my customers that want, some of them I don't confuse it, but some want to keep it simple and some just say, send me a list, right? They do you too. Just say, send me the bulls that fit what I need. All right, tell me what you need, and we go through what's their market, what's their environment, what are their goals, what are their limitations. So these are some things, as you look at this one, for me, I've got mature size down here at a more conservative level. I've got milk production and energy more in the middle. I've got a real wide level of acceptability for fat. I want my indexes to be up there towards the top. Now, let's look at this one. Now I'm fixing to change it to a terminal approach. If I'm selecting strictly a terminal cross, an animal to be used in a terminal system, looks very different. In fact, there's several of those traits I'm not even going to look at because it's a terminal animal that I'm selecting. Looks like a different chart, and it is because the situation is different. But I really think if you'll take that on Excel, you can color all those. It's really neat. And then I color about 10,000 bulls a year in the different breeds that I work with. I'll color code those so that I can see. And I tell you what really jumps out at me, Sable, is the bad ones. Sometimes we really get focused on what's really good and we forget about some of the holes that some of these cattle have. But when I highlight it in red, man, it jumps out at me like a neon sign. Today, we have cattle with big engines that can run really fast. In fact, sometimes they can run faster than what our environment might allow them to be able to express. So if we were to have a race, Marty Ropp, with this vehicle, and we're going to bet which vehicle is going to win the race, and we know one's got a significantly faster engine than the other, which one of these two car vehicles is going to win the race? It depends. It depends on the environment. If I'm in this environment, I'm quite confident I know that race car is going to win the race. If I've got a pristine, perfect environment, they're going to have ideal nutrition, and they're going to rock and roll with the very least amount of stress, the one that's got the biggest engine is going to go produce the most and go the fastest. But if I'm in this type of an environment, I'm pretty sure that old ranch pickup is going to get me there more reliably and probably for quite a bit less cost than that other one. Or maybe let's look at it as though we're driving them on the same terrain, but we're not pushing on the gas pedal the same amount. You know, I don't know about y'all, but I remember the first time I was in a vehicle where the speedometer pegged out. And I was a little bit scared. You know, it kind of started to shake a little bit and it was rolling. We were multiple into the 3 digits in the speedometer, and that wasn't in kilometers either. It was going faster than I felt comfortable in going, and I was afraid we were going to have a wreck. And so I remember when my oldest son bought his first vehicle, he wanted a pickup that was really affordable to run. So he bought a used pickup. But he did his homework and he found a pickup that a guy, 85-year-old man had had for 5 years, and it had 15,000 miles on it. It had never been over 60 miles an hour. And the oil was changed religiously. And that pickup served him well. Now, my youngest son, he needed a bigger pickup. So he got him one of those big ones and dualies and double 4 doors and all of that, until he got a girlfriend 60 miles away. And then the cost of production was a little higher than what he was ready to pay for, and he adjusted down. So how much fuel do we have available in our environment helps determine where those targets need to be and where those places to avoid need to be. And I want to talk bull development for just a little bit, because I remember when I was, my sister Mary Ann and I were 2 years apart, and my folks always had it where we didn't own our own show heifers. Each of us owned 50% of our siblings' show heifer. So my parents really incentivized us to work together. And I would do chores in the morning and she would do chores in the evening. And I remember right after she got her driver's license, and she's several years older than me, right after she got her driver's license, every Saturday morning and Sunday morning, I would borrow her car to go and do the chores about a quarter of a mile away where our show heifers were. Now, I don't know if she really knew she was letting me borrow her car, but anyway, that's really irrelevant to the story. But man, there was right up there close to our heifers, there was this big gravel parking lot. Now, this car had a pretty big motor. And one day nobody was around and it was quiet. And man, here I was 12 years old and I spun 2 big old donuts. I pressed on the scales and I spun it like that right there. I mean, my heart was beating out of my chest. It was awesome. And then I stopped and I got out and the tires are smoking and there's dust everywhere and there's these donut tracks. And then I got nervous. I thought, man, I got to let these tires quit smoking before I go back down to the house. And I ran to the shop and I got a broom and I swept out all of my tracks so nobody would know. I went and fed the heifers. Now, where we fed the heifers, it was a quarter of a mile, but you couldn't see it from our house. It was up on a hill. Our house was down below. And I remember driving slowly back down to the house that morning. My dad was out on the porch. And to this day, the only words he's ever said to me were this: son, You will be buying the tires from now on. I had been caught red-handed. In bull development, I know a lot of people now are backing off instead of maximizing production on the developing bull. More, let's test these bulls for performance, for efficiency, for carcass value, for all these things while developing them for longevity. Because when I spun the tires on that car, was it good for the tires? Scott Griner, was it good for the, no, it wasn't good for the tire, wasn't good for the transmission, wasn't good for the gravel road. So more like that 85-year-old man, I want to take it and handle it and develop it with care, but at a pace fast enough to measure, Gordon Hodges, the genetic differences between those animals. And with that, we've got to measure those things. Without those tools, it's like driving blindfolded, and I don't know where we went. My dad's tried to get EPDs in quarter horses 1997, and they rejected that. They refused to have that science. And they still struggle to make accurate prediction today of identifying more superior genetics. EPDs doesn't mean we're going to make the best decisions. No, I think it will. Doesn't mean we're going to make the right decisions every time. It means we'll make more right ones than we do wrong ones. But, you know, as we look at certain traits, can we get too much of a good thing? You know, I think sometimes we can. So, you know, are we just going to look at the car? Are we just going to look at the bells and whistles and what the sales guys tell us? Are we going to look at the window sticker that tells us what's inside the cab, what's under the hood, that's going to help us with that animal as we move forward? So with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Derek.
Y'all are thinking question for him, I'm gonna challenge Donnell.
Okay, all right.
Back up to that big table that had all the breeds and all your pretty colors.
Like that one?
No, the other one, that.
Okay, all right.
So, how do you handle the situation? I'm not saying I argue with what you have up there, but I see a challenge. And
Okay.
that is something like mature weight and your growth traits.
Yep.
Highly correlated, positively correlated.
Antagonistically, right?
How can you achieve what you're wanting to with that kind of antagonistic correlation?
Yeah, absolutely. So our number one goal at R.A. Brown Ranch is to improve the profitability and the sustainability of our customers through our genetics and our service. So for years, we've always said we want animals that are born easily, grow fast to an acceptable market weight and mature size, and then stop and not keep growing. And that's kind of what this chart describes: is cattle born easy, grow fast, but not get too big. And yeah, is that hard to do? Absolutely. But so was making cattle that were top 5% for both calving, ease, and growth. Making animals that were top 5% for both marbling and muscle. Those antagonistically related traits. So we're measuring mature weight, have been for 18 years. We're doing those things to help bend that growth curve. Now, if I look and I hit a middle zone in the dark green on every one of those, and I put it into our EPD selection criteria on the spreadsheet or on the website, Jerry, at American Angus, I wouldn't find a single animal. All right. I wouldn't find a single animal. But what this does, then what I need to do here is go, all right, what traits are most important to my customers? And I'll tell you, we did about 15 years ago, we did an evaluation where we did a correlation. You brought up the term correlation. We did correlation of bull price to every metric that I had on our cattle. And what I found was the EPD most highly, for my customers 15 years ago, most highly correlated to price was a selection index that I wasn't even printing in my catalog. I was on a race to the highest $B I could get to, and my customers weren't even being presented $W or $M, but that's what they were paying the most for by looking at the individual traits that make up that selection index. So, you know, is it hard? Absolutely, it's hard. But I'm trying to defy those antagonisms to make it work. And what's interesting is I look at this chart from 15 years ago, and I look at the average EPDs of the calves in our herd today, and they really light up that in the green across nearly all of those traits. Because of genetic trend, we're making progress, slowly but sure. Great question.
It is. So, y'all need to turn on your vote. You got it turned on forward. Yeah.
I think at least two of you alluded to what I see as a significant problem for genetic improvement of commercial beef cattle. I call it the complexity issue. And I think increasingly, I look at sale catalogs where we have multiple breeds represented in sale catalog. We have an attempt by that seller to describe the EPDs for each of those breeds. We have different language. We have different words that even describe the same, some of the same traits. And what I think I see is increasingly potential buyers who are kind of throwing their hands up in the air and basically, and maybe they're doing is something as simple as this, saying, tell me which bull to buy. And I think some of you kind of alluded to that. But also, I have a second part of that I'd like to have you address is, does BIF have a role in what I would call addressing the complexity issue in our looking at genetic improvement of beef cattle? So I'll just throw that to any of you that wish to respond to that.
Well, I would just say that I think if we look at the history of BIF, historically, essentially all of the breed associations have looked to BIF for guidance in developing their genetic evaluation programs and the way they present their data. And so I think without question, BIF is the format that can bring some continuity to some of these issues across breeds in particular. I do think pretty much all of the breeds have worked very diligently, particularly in trying to create selection indexes that probably work better for the commercial sector than they do the seed stock sector in an effort to simplify the analysis of all the data that's in front of us by creating indexes that will have multiple traits evaluated in a weighted fashion for a goal.
Aren't we keep adding selection indexes? We don't take anything out. So in other words, when I see a selection index, I might also see 15 EPDs. And so what I'm talking about is this buyer coming in, looking at this, and I still don't think I think there's lots and lots of buyers that just almost don't have a clue with what is being presented there.
Totally agree with you. And so I think as a seed stock producer, in part, it's my responsibility to know my customer base, to know and understand what they need in terms of information from me. And I just modify what I present to them. I'm not trying to hide anything from them, obviously. But I mean, looking at the newly introduced Angus EPDs, for example, hair shed, foot scores, those things, I think we all recognize that these are desperately needed EPDs so that we can quantify cattle in traits that we need to work on. And the obvious thing to do is figure out a way that we can incorporate those new EPDs into selection indexes because those traits very directly affect the result of what we're trying to accomplish with these indexes.
Yeah, I guess I would follow that up. The selection index piece is a big part of it. And also making sure that customer is picking the right index. So they're not chasing dollars deep when they're trying to do what we're doing, for example. I still like to see the EPDs there personally. And I appreciate for maybe a bit freakishly different than some, but there's traits within an index. So I may select cattle on an index, but I still need to emphasize calving a little bit more just because of my scenario. And I do think take it the wrong way, but there is a big difference between a bull seller and a seed stock service provider. And there has to be some accountability there on both sides of that equation.
Yeah, excellent point. There's lots of purebred breeders, seed stock. What'd you call it? A seed stock,
Wholesalers?
no, the other one. Seed stock, service provider. Thank you. Yes, that's outstanding. So working with 17 different breeds, producing 17 different breeds in my lifetime on our ranch. So I understand the complexity of multi-breeds and comparing across breeds. It's really complex. One of the reasons why we just have 3 breeds today. But one, there's a lot of data and managing the data with 3, different breed associations and so on. In fact, Becky Hayes is back here in the back. I'm honored to work with Becky Hayes. She does all of our data and she lives 700 miles from my house. But, I'm excited to see her 3 kids, Lindsay and Jessica, in here today, and Cody, wanting to learn as some of the youngest people at this whole conference. But we've got to get the data and use the data, and summarizing it and making it simple across breed is one of the things we've worked really hard at. So the STAR system is something we've done for years, where we rank them from 0 to 5 stars. And our star rating system does every breed across breed. I use a Clay Center adjustment chart to do that. And so as I look at it, let's see if I can get this thing to go to the next one. Let's see. Yeah, can you advance that for me on one?
We will try.
Okay, there we go. All right, so there's lot 1 in our sale. You can see the percentile ranks are the boldest thing on there. Because I can figure out, I may not be where exactly a top 20% of the breed is for this trait and that trait, but I can figure out 0 to 100 on percentile rank, or 0 to 99. And then the stars down here at the bottom, I go 0 to 5 stars for each of those traits. And I use a selection index to identify that. And Ken, maybe that's where BIF can help us, is identifying some selection indexes to come up with star rating systems for animals that excel. To me, most of the traits that we have are in those handful of traits. If I can count them on one hand, our customers love this and they use it religiously, but like anything, they do it because they trust the guy providing the information. We are big believers in BIF, and so maybe that is the source to help us, because there are other people that are using the stars that don't have the same level of conservatism that I'm going to have for calving ease, for example. All right, for growth, one's got to be above average to earn at least 1 star. So where is that? But as you look at it, here is there it is blown up a little bit where you can see the percentile ranks. And here's another one. That's actually a red Angus bull, with different EPDs, different percentile ranks compared to red Angus, but stars that are comparable one to the other. Our Sim Angus bulls would be the same, but it's a scientifically based ways to cliff notes the essential traits relative to what commercial producers are using. That to me is a solution. John?
Yeah, I would just add to that, one of the roles I think that BIF has that's really important, is helping to identify that profit drivers aren't always easily measurable traits. So in our operation, weaning weight is 100% not a profit driver for me. If I wean 700-pound calves, I would be tits up broke in 2 years. If I wean 500-pound calves, I can make money all day, right? So, but it's easy to measure, right? So, and that's a huge role of BIF, is to help identify those profit drivers for different production scenarios.
Thank you.
Another question? Come on, sure. All right, I'm gonna have each of you guys, if you would, Paul, we'll start with you. If you were king of the world and could make all the scientists do it, what EPD would you have? I'm gonna make my Brody mad because I'm gonna add to it EPDs now. What EPD do we not have that we both should have?
Well, I listened this morning, so I'd say we need a methane EPD. I've already talked to some folks at one of the breed association and asked them what their timeline is on that.
Be selfish now.
What he said. No, actually for us, and I have to think about how you define that trait, but a grazing functionality trait would be massive for us. Like my profit driver is the days I don't feed cows. So for me, a grazing functionality or a winter survival, would be massive.
So is that grazing functionality, so like feed efficiency on grazing, something like that?
Well, it's probably actually an index, so it probably would relate to body condition and foraging ability, dry matter intake on the higher end of more intake. Feet and leg structure is probably a pretty complicated index, to be honest.
All right, I shared our number one goal, and it includes sustainability and profitability. I want an index that tells me the animals with the most sustained profitability throughout their lifetime, that identifies the cattle that do the most things right and the least things wrong, and make the most money for our customers long term. I would love to see it multi-breed across all breeds. And maybe it's 3 of them. Maybe it's one for a terminal situation. Maybe it's one for a maternal, making replacement females, and maybe an all-purpose. I would love to see that, and then I would love to see it in a system that I can simply, a decision support system where I can really simply plug in what the type and kind of my cows are. And then when I use bull A, B, or C, how that in utilizing heterosis and breed complementarity, which bull's going to be the right breed and the right bull within the breed to make that decision.
So something simple.
So there, I actually had I had two EPDs I like that. I think that, and the one that I'll mention now, I think is in process, but I think we're going to learn a lot about heart health in the next few years. I think there's a lot of discovery being done right now, and I do believe it will be very revealing to us. You know, we think about our heart health in humans, and I can only imagine that the same would exist with beef cattle. And I do believe that we will have the evolution of an EPD related to heart health that will tell us a lot about what we're trying to do with these cattle.
Well, can I add one to this?
Sure.
I would like to see a heifer rebreeding EPD. I know it's part of sustained cow fertility or stability, but it's easy to get heifers pregnant. It's hard to get them rebred. And
It's out there, it only has to bring 30, right? Yeah, I agree with you. I wish all the breeds would get to bring 30. That's basically what that is.
Especially when your goal is to eliminate cow depreciation, that would be good.
Yeah, I agree with you. One more question, you guys.
Just wondering, Donnell, you mentioned, an overall profitability for, does that lean towards, Leachman's dollar profit, indexing?
You know, we've been using the dollar profit database for about 8 years, and I do find it really good. I think it's an additional tool in our toolbox to help us make better decisions. And so, in my mind, there's no doubt there's not a better, they're not better crossbreed selection indexes that better describe it. And the really cool thing for like my Angus population is I've got fertility EPD already on our Angus cattle and have for a multitude of years. And so, you know, I think we're going to have, you know, we're in a unique and awkward time relative to genetic evaluation, because before our breed associations were the sole providers of those, right? And now there's competition in that space, and there's competition from private companies, there's competition from international companies, there's competition from genetic companies, and there's some genetic companies doing their own evaluation. And so, but I'm a believer, I'm a red-blooded capitalist, and I'm a believer that competition is a great thing. To me, dollar profit index and that whole database is not a substitute for a breed association set of metrics. Is additional tools in the toolbox, and you know, we need to keep making those better. And I think the neat part about that index, that system, is that there's pros and cons. All right, it has the ability to move faster and adopt technology quicker than what most of our membership-run organizations will allow us to do, because change tends to be uncomfortable. But we're gonna have breed association genetic predictions for a long time, and we're gonna have more and more private genetic evaluations. And I want to be a part of as many of them as I can be that give us the most accurate information to make the right decision.